The forest is not quiet. It feels like it is holding its breath, waiting for something to finally break, somewhere beyond the mist. Movement pauses between the trees, slow, deliberate, invisible. Then the silence snaps. Gunfire erupts across the daylight, cutting through fog and branches as one defensive position after another suddenly goes silent, as if the forest itself is swallowing them whole. Inside a buried bunker, the radio never stops screaming. A young operator sits frozen, headphones pressed tight, listening to fragmented voices that refuse to stay alive long enough to finish their sentences. We are falling back. I repeat, we are fall. The transmission tears apart mid-message and dissolves into static, leaving only the sound of electrical noise and distant chaos leaking through the speaker. Outside, there is no clear front line anymore, only scattered echoes of battle moving through the fog, too close to feel safe, too unclear to understand. The radio is the only connection left to anything structured, anything real, and even that connection is breaking, one voice at a time, until there may be nothing left to hear at all. Before the forest became a battlefield, it was just another cold stretch of land in northern Europe, dense, wet, and constantly swallowed by fog even in daylight. In 1943, this region held something far more important than the trees themselves, a narrow supply route, running straight through it. Whoever controlled that road controlled the movement of fuel, ammunition, and entire divisions of soldiers. And right now, both sides understood the same truth: this forest would decide how far the war could continue in this sector. The defenders were not here to win anything outright. Their orders were simpler and far more desperate. Hold the line long enough for the rear forces to retreat, reorganize, and prevent a total collapse of the front. Every armattered, every position lost meant fewer chances for survival elsewhere. Before we continue, if you enjoy intense, realistic war narratives like this, consider subscribing, leaving a like, and comment what you think matters more in war communication or firepower. Now, this is where the line begins to break. The attack begins in full daylight, but the forest turns it into something unclear and fragmented. There is no open battlefield, no clean horizon of advancing troops, only sudden explosions between trees, followed by brief silences that feel heavier than the gunfire itself. Artillery impacts tear through the canopy, sending splinters of wood and wet soil into the thick fog that sits low across the ground. Defensive positions that were coordinated just hours ago now respond in isolation, each one fighting without knowing what the others are seeing or losing. Inside the bunker, the radio operator listens as the forest turns into noise. Reports arrive in broken fragments, voices cutting in and out, sentences collapsing before they finish. A unit to the north confirms contact, then disappears mid-transmission. Another to the east reports movement in the trees, followed by static. The map on the table is still structured, still organized, but every message makes it feel more outdated, like it belongs to a different version of the battlefield. For a brief moment, command still believes the line is holding. The defensive network is large enough that gaps can be explained as delays, interference, or confusion in the fog. Orders continue to come in with controlled urgency, redirecting fire support and reinforcing key sectors along the supply route that cuts through the forest. On paper, the structure still exists. But outside, the structure is already breaking apart. The operator hears the first real sign of collapse when a full company stops responding. No distress call, no final report, just silence after a short burst of heavy breathing and distant gunfire. He looks up from the radio as if expecting someone to explain it, but the bunker remains unchanged. Dim light, vibrating equipment, and the low hum of generators struggling against overload. A wounded runner arrives minutes later, collapsing at the entrance of the bunker. He doesn't bring clarity, only fragments. He says the forest is too thick now. That visibility is gone beyond a few meters. That units are firing at movement they can't confirm. Then he stops talking altogether, unable or unwilling to continue. Still, the line is officially considered intact. Reinforcements are promised. Coordinates are being adjusted. Someone higher up insists the situation is stable enough to manage. But inside the bunker, the operator is no longer hearing a coordinated defense. He is hearing isolated groups trying to survive long enough to be heard. and every transmission that comes through feels further away than the last. The forest does not collapse all at once. It fails in layers, first through communication, then through coordination, and finally through silence. One by one, the lines that connected each defensive position begin to disappear. What was once a structured network across the forest becomes a scattering of isolated voices, each fighting in a different version of the same war. Inside the bunker, the radio operator starts noticing a pattern. Transmissions no longer arrive with context. They come as fragments, coordinates without names, reports without endings, voices that sound closer than they should but never stay long enough to confirm anything. The map on the table becomes less useful with every passing minute. Marks are added, then questioned, then crossed out entirely. Units begin to vanish from the network without explanation. A position that was holding 10 minutes ago simply stops responding. No follow-up, no distress signal, no confirmation of retreat, just silence. At first, command assumes relocation, then interference, then uncertainty starts, replacing assumptions altogether. The bunker itself begins to change. Soldiers who once moved in and out with updates stop returning. A runner sent to confirm the eastern line does not come back. Another unit arrives briefly, exhausted and disoriented, saying they can no longer recognize the terrain beyond a few dozen meters. The forest, they say, no longer feels navigable. It feels like it is folding in on itself. The operator is pulled between systems that no longer match reality. Orders still arrive from command, but they are slower now, based on information that is already outdated by the time it reaches the bunker. Requests for updates are sent out, but fewer and fewer are answered. The radio becomes less of a tool and more of a witness. Outside, the fighting moves closer without clear transitions. There is no front line advancing in a visible way, only pressure building in all directions at once. Gunfire appears deeper, inside the forest than expected, then suddenly closer to the perimeter, as if entire units are being repositioned without warning. By the time the bunker receives confirmation that a major defensive sector has fallen, it no longer feels like news. It feels like a delayed acknowledgement of something that already happened hours ago. The operator realizes the truth gradually, not through a single moment, but through accumulation. The forest is no longer being defended as a whole. By the time the forest reaches its final phase, there is no longer any structure left to describe. The idea of a front line has dissolved completely. What remains is scattered resistant small groups of soldiers holding fragments of terrain, unaware of how much of the forest has already been lost around them. The bunker is no longer a command center in any meaningful sense. It has become a damaged node in a collapsing network, still receiving transmissions, but no longer capable of turning them into anything coherent. The radio operator listens as voices overlap, interrupt, and disappear, as if multiple battles are happening at once in different directions, all equally real and equally disconnected. Then the pressure arrives directly, not as a clear formation, but as movement inside the forest itself. Gunfire begins to echo closer to the bunker perimeter. Trees shake under distant explosions. The fog outside the entrance thickens with smoke and dust, reducing the world to shapes that cannot be trusted. For the first time, the operator leaves the radio station. The transition is not heroic, it is forced. He steps out of the bunker into a battlefield that no longer resembles any map. He has been updating. The forest is broken, trenches have collapsed, equipment abandoned mid-use, and defensive positions overtaken or left empty without explanation. He joins what remains of a small defensive group trying to stabilize the collapse. Combat is close, chaotic, and disorienting. There is no clear direction of attack, only sudden encounters between trees in ruined positions. Soldiers move in short bursts, reacting to sound more than sight. Orders are shouted and lost immediately in the wind and gunfire. Despite everything, the defenders continue resisting, not because the situation is controllable, but because stopping is no longer an option available to them. Every position they hold delays the inevitable, even if only by minutes. The forest becomes a place where survival replaces strategy, and endurance replaces coordination. The operator moves between roles: radio operator, runner, soldier, without any clear boundary between them anymore. He relays information when he can, fights when he must, and returns to the bunker only when there is a brief chance to restore communication. But each return shows the same truth: fewer signals, fewer answers, less structure. Eventually, even the bunker is no longer a center. It is just another position in a forest that has already been overtaken piece by piece. The defenders are still fighting, still resisting, still trying, but they are no longer connected, and without connection, even the strongest defense begins to fall apart from within. Inside the bunker, the radio operator keeps trying to transmit long after the structure has stopped functioning as a command center. Messages go out, but they return as distortion, static, and broken replies that no longer form a coherent picture. The last attempt to organize a final defensive effort never fully materializes. The forest has already overtaken the network that made coordination possible. The final transmission is incomplete, not because of surrender, but because there is nothing left to connect. The signal breaks, returns briefly, then disappears entirely. What remains is only static, echoing through an abandoned system. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe for more immersive war narratives, and comment what you think matters more in war communication or firepower.